everyone, I'm the Sega Scourge and welcome back to another episode of Sonic What If, for part 3 of What If E-102 Gamma survived. Arguably the most tragic yet bittersweet what if of them all. This tale first began in a revamped finale of Gamma's story in SA1. Due to a particular chain of events involving E-101 Beta Mark II, we learned that the pink birdie, or rather Flicky, inside of Gamma was mortally wounded by the black and white machine, becoming symbiotically dependent on the suspended animation that Gamma's body provides. Without him, she would perish, as would he without her. Having survived the scrap with his older brother, Gamma persevered, and as time went on, he was granted two things. The first was a direly needed upgrade. With the help of a certain Foxboy genius, Beta's leftover remains were Frankensteinishly grafted onto Gamma, gifting him with a new arm cannon, new propulsion system, and a high-powered energy shield generator. But the second and more important gift came before that, when Gamma first saw the picture inside of the Blue Birdie's locket. Due to a system anomaly likely brought about by the Flicky inside of him, he gained a new mission directive: return home. Return the Flickies to their owner. And last time in part 2, having departed with the blue and white Flickies, Gamma found that home. A mysterious, forgotten island inhabited not only by winged creatures, but also human archaeologists who'd settled on the landmass for research purposes. Among those archaeologists were two original characters to this what if: Tomo, authority on ancient architecture and foreman of the group. Alongside him was his adorable, animal-loving, photography enthusiast granddaughter, Aya, the Flicky Trio's original guardian. It was then that we discovered their names to be Me, the blue Flicky, Fu, the white Flicky, and Ko, the pink Flicky. After a heartwarming reunion, things were very touch and go for a while regarding Gamma. Aya was frightened of the gangly, beady-eyed drone. Tomo and the others grew hostile, seeing Gamma as a menace rather than a protector. But Gamma eventually proved himself when he aided the camp during a ferocious typhoon, nearly losing his own life in the process. He came forward to Aya and gave her details on the status of Ko, the pink Flicky inside him. Learning the truth, the two shared an emotional moment as she accepted him with open arms, welcoming him into their family. Since then, things have remained tranquil, calm, and uneventful. Although Gamma's still fixated on finding a way to set Ko free, he's otherwise made himself comfortably at home in this retreat. He's become quite the helper around camp, while also acting as something of a bodyguard. But beyond all of that, he's become a friend to the people around him, especially Aya, who often goes wherever he does, spending her days in playful pastimes with her BFF, a little girl and her robot. One evening, like any other, Aya and her two Flicky companions race through the vast forests surrounding home base. It seems that they're currently immersed in a particularly intense game of hide and seek, a game which Gamma's taking perhaps a little too seriously.
Gamma! Come out wherever you are!
Aya sprightly calls out, searching every nook and cranny for the unseen droid. As she stops and sweeps for subtle signs of movement, it's then that she spots what looks like the silhouette of Gamma lurking behind the bushes in the area ahead, his stocky body preventing him from being fully hidden, appearing shorter as if crouched or standing in a small ditch. A mischievous grin plastered on her face, the rascally Aya sneaks onward towards him. One step at a time, she makes it closer and closer, taking gentle steps to avoid crunching the leaves at her feet. Now overlooking the figure, she springs through, jumping from the bush triumphantly.
I found you!
The scarlet robot does not respond. Aya's smiling glee slowly turns to anxious befuddlement, wondering if Gamma's upset about losing. Only now, upon further inspection, does she realize.
Wait, you're not...
From the dark, the mechanical imposter turns to meet her. She's right. It's not Gamma. It's E-123, Omega. Out of nowhere, Omega has spontaneously shown up on the island. How he got here remains a mystery, but his reasons for doing so are soon to become obvious. The intimidating golem moves in to interrogate her, spouting off queries in a bassy, brutish voice.
Juvenile meatbag, relay information immediately. Where is the inferior E-series known as E-102 Gamma?
Not talking to strangers is one thing, but this is on a whole nother level. The faint of heart Aya is at a loss for words, her face vapidly petrified, confused, and emblazoned by the sheen of Omega's blood-red eyes. Mi and Fu share her timidity as the two of them recede into frozen terror. Although Aya's not typically one to judge based on appearances, for all intents and purposes, this inexplicable automaton doesn't exactly give off the impression of friendly. Furthermore, it's rather provocatively inquiring about Gamma, whom there's still no sign of. Recognizing the element of danger and in a bid to stand up for her friends, the courageous Aya plays coy, evading Omega's question.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anyone called Gamma.
Aya's fib, brave and bold as it may be, only implicates her further. Omega didn't ask because he thinks she knows Gamma, oh no.
Inaccurate. You vocalized his name just a moment ago. Direct me to Gamma's current location or be eviscerated. You have 10 seconds to comply.
As Omega counts down, he fails to realize that Aya's been gradually sliding her hand towards her camera without notice. Thanks to Omega's carelessness, on the count of 10, Aya budges her camera forward and snaps a photo. The camera flash goes off directly into Omega's optics, blinding him with a sudden and brief burst of phosphorescence. The robot rendered momentarily sightless. Aya bolts, slipping away into the woods as fast as she possibly can. She releases the flickies from her arms and tells them to fly away to safety, but the loyal avians refuse to leave her no matter how much she tries to shoo them. Aya clamorously calls out at the top of her lungs, her pleas echoing far throughout the forest. Omega, having wiped the metaphorical egg from his face, comes steaming after her, up in arms for being mocked by a little girl. He closes in on her, crashing about the woodland as Aya ducks and leaps around trees, over logs and through shrubbery until eventually, unsurprisingly, Omega drives her into a corner. Too tired to flee and with nowhere else to go, she cradles the flickies and steels herself with the notion that she tried as hard as she could. However, before Omega can enact his revenge, something else comes to monopolize the cutthroat robot's attention. A red figure plunging from high altitude and clonking into the ground between Aya and Omega in a cloud of exhaust fumes. Aya is wild with joy. Her hero is here. He's come to her rescue. Gamma has arrived, having vacated his hiding place upon hearing her cries for help and surveying the island with his quartile jet boosters. Making the scene, Gamma asks Aya if she, Mi, and Fu are alright, to which she nods. He mounts guard on them, all the while honing in on a very zealous Omega and probing the robot for information.
You are an E-series? I was under the impression that I was the last of my line. State your intent and designation. Did Dr. Eggman send you to find me?
I have no obligation to Eggman. I am E-123 Omega, and I am here for me. I am here solely for your annihilation.
I'm sure you've already noticed that this Omega seems quite a contrast to his otherwise valiant game counterpart. Well, you see, while he still possesses his own free will, in this What If, Omega wasn't sealed away by Dr. Eggman. He never defected from the Eggman Empire, and he hasn't met Shadow and Rouge. This Omega was brought online for the sole purpose of tracking down Gamma. The Doctor didn't forget about the traitorous E-102. He said he'd find him way back in Part 1. But since he's got his hands full with other projects like the Egg Fleet, he sent Omega to do the job in his stead. Now, while it's true that the Doctor did indeed dispatch him to find Gamma, don't be fooled. Omega isn't here out of any desire to serve. Rather, he's come to prove himself against his predecessor. This may be a different Omega than the one we know from the main series, but he still possesses that inflated superiority complex, the compulsion to be the strongest, a compulsion that Eggman has exaltedly exploited. As long as there's another in his line, Omega's hunger can never truly be satiated. Thus, he's here to secure his rank as the ultimate, unrivaled E-series robot. Now, before you start waving your Sonic Universe issue 3s, I know I know. But Archie fan or not, viewer demand for Gamma vs Omega has been huge in this What If, and the writing's on the wall here. They had to meet eventually, but I bet you didn't expect it to be so soon or under these circumstances. Gamma quickly scans Omega's internals, expecting to find a captive small animal, but his checks come back negative. Omega is not the conventional E-series. He's not equipped with an organic power source. Instead, he runs on chaos drives. As Gamma continues to look Omega up and down, he can't help but downplay the level of danger due to the mech's build. Going by the official info, Gamma stands at 7'1", while Omega is only 4'11". He's somewhat pocket-sized in comparison to his lanky precursors. In fact, he's only slightly bigger than Aya.
It would appear that the newer E-series models are deficient in vertical proportions.
My stature is not a benchmark for my strength. Commencing demonstration.
Undoubtedly vexed by the comments on his height, Omega bounds at Gamma. Gamma 2 lunges towards to counteract, but this precipitous offense catches Gamma by surprise, realizing just how startlingly fast Omega is despite his bulkiness. Now in close quarters, Omega lashes his arm, swiping his razor-sharp claws. Gamma moves just in the nick of time, avoiding the brunt of harm. However, the attack was not completely whiffed. Omega delivers a barbarous vertical slash, tearing a gaping laceration into Gamma's chest region, hacking through the metal bar at his waist, and even severing his spotlight. Quite literally agape from the lesion, Gamma manages to shove himself away before a second strike is delivered, skidding to safety with his heel-mounted wheels as Aya and the Flickies come to his aid. Gamma now grasps the danger this powerhouse poses. Despite his stout dimensions, Omega just cleaved through Gamma's frame like it was made of papier-mâché. If he hadn't evaded, that scratch could have very well been a killing blow. Let's not forget, in Sonic 06, Omega was said to be capable of defeating Shadow the Hedgehog, whereas Gamma couldn't even stand up to Sonic back in SA1. He's astronomically outclassed here, and as Omega moves in to resume the assault, Gamma instructs Aya and the birds to get clear.
Leave me. Hurry back to camp. Alert Tomo and the others.
But
Do not argue. Go, now!
Gamma uncharacteristically stamps his foot and scolds Aya in an effort to hasten her getaway. This strained performance works as Aya fetches the Flickies and runs with them back towards the campsite. With his cherished friends at a safe distance, Gamma activates the energy shield on his left arm. Omega, as if to reciprocate, retracts his hands into their sockets, producing twin rotary cannons in their stead. Before long, the pair are embroiled in what can only be described as a chase mixed with an all-out gunfight. Gamma retreats, changing between modes to drive or glide around obstacles, all the while exchanging blasts with the pursuing Omega. While Gamma could simply fly out of Omega's reach and off to safety, disappearing would only leave the island itself under siege, and even if he fled the island completely, Omega would just follow relentlessly, potentially harming others on his warpath like Amy Rose or Miles Prower. Gamma knows he has to finish things here and now. But before he once again devotes himself to their fray, he makes one solitary attempt at persuading Omega to cease.
E-123 Omega, there is no need for us to do this. I changed, and so can you. See reason. Be more than what Dr. Eggman made you.
Why are we still talking when we should be fighting? Boredom increased by 40%. Annoyance rising at a commensurate rate.
Gamma's words fall on deaf audio sensors. There's sadly no convincing Omega here. He is totally one-track minded. Omega abides by an insatiable hunger for battle. He craves combat. He covets conflict. And in his world, it's survival of the fittest, and only the strongest may survive. He doesn't even care about the pink flicky that Gamma harbors. All that matters is his supremacy. Thus, Omega continues showering lead, which Gamma blocks with the use of his shield, unaware that their combined trajectory is about to send them on a collision course with innocent lives. Meanwhile, back at camp, its inhabitants are now made aware of a disturbance due to the sounds of gunfire and flares of light from afar. Team leader Professor Tomo stands outside the tents with his crew. As they take preliminary measures to secure the grounds, they spot Mi and Fu gliding by one of the tents at the far side of the camp. Following them is Aya, frenziedly waving her arms and calling out to anyone who can hear. Then, the distant sounds of artillery grow closer and louder. All of a sudden, both Gamma and Omega come cracking through the trees and careening into the campsite. The archaeologists hit the deck and run for cover, darting in all directions as their quarters are turned into Swiss cheese by Omega's scattered barrage. Gamma is at a dilemma, his missions conflicting. He can't let harm come to the people here, but he also can't let himself be destroyed, as that would forfeit the life of Ko inside him. At odds with himself, Gamma is so caught up in processing that he doesn't see Aya and the Flickies are still out in the open. Witnessing this, Professor Tomo shouts, "Aya! Get out of the way!" In an act of familial instinct, Tomo breaks into a rapid sprint towards her, unconcerned with his own welfare as stray shots from Omega come propelling through the barracks and towards his helpless granddaughter, as tragedy lies but a breath away. At the very last second, Tomo dives through the air and throws himself in front of her, taking a bullet in the back. He slams to the ground, grunting in agony as Aya, seeing what he's done, clamors to help him. The bullet is still lodged inside, so as you can imagine, it doesn't exactly tickle. Thankfully, by all accounts, Tomo seems like he's going to be okay. Aya, panicked and heavy-hearted, compels him to return to his feet. But all is not as it seems.
Grandpa, please! Please get up! We have to go!
I can't! I can't move my legs! While still guarding Omega's flurry, Gamma's head turns, sighting the downed Tomo and teary-eyed Aya. Quickly realizing what's happened, time seems to slow to a crawl. A crushing gravitational force yanks down on Gamma's entire exoskeleton, that being the unfathomable weight of failure. Forbidding this dangerous situation to continue, Gamma manages to draw Omega away and out of the camp, luring the mad machine back into the far ends of the forest, just overlooking the coastline. Now at a safe distance and more out in the open, it's time for round 2. With his higher speed and multi-dimensional mobility, Gamma manages to keep his distance from Omega, rocket boosting in a strafing motion side to side, as well as going airborne and swooping around E-123 in a circle. As Omega mocks him for prolonging the inevitable, Gamma calculates. He notes that Omega's been tanking head-on blasts without a scratch, with minimal defensive actions. The Titan's armor is very thick. Thusly, Gamma needs to find a way to circumvent it. There must be an Achilles heel, right? Gamma lets off pop shots from behind his shield. With his superior targeting system and being the better marksman, he begins probing for a weak spot in Omega's architecture. Between plates, the joints of his arms and legs, he even attempts to employ Aya's tactics of aiming for his eyes, but Omega merely raises his arm to cover his face. The battle rages on for an elongated duration, with Gamma persistently trying out various means to cripple this impossible opposition. However, as Omega's negating fire bludgeons Gamma's shield, shockingly, the crystalline energy that makes up the barrier begins to crack. Though it was thought to be nigh impervious, Omega's colossal hammering is overstraining the shield emitter. It won't take much more, and once it's gone, he'll be defenseless. It's a miracle that Gamma's still going. He never would have lasted this long if it wasn't for his upgrades. If this was SA1 Gamma, he'd have been finished already. But even with the enhancements and his determination, it soon becomes apparent that his efforts are in vain. Omega shows no chinks in the armor. He's abundantly reinforced, immovable. The fact is, he's just too powerful. What can Gamma do? If he keeps his distance, he'll be blown full of holes, but if he gets up close, he'll be ripped in half. Perhaps he could knock Omega into the ocean? Perhaps he could redirect some of Omega's gunfire back at him. Omega, still running at peak efficiency, grows tired of this game. It's time to up the ante. He opts to bring things to the most spectacular conclusion he can muster. The walking arsenal unloads his entire weapon stockade, peppering the entire region with missiles and cannonade. Widespread explosions blanket an eighth of the island and light up the night like fireworks. Gamma's polychromatic shield, taking the brunt of the discharge, finally reaches its limit and shatters like glass. He is thrown through the air, splintering through trees in quick succession before plowing against a rock so severely that he's knocked into some kind of daze. As he tries to recover, his heads-up display overflowing with static, Gamma sees something moving beyond the interference. Surrounded by jumbled clumps of jittering color comes an anomalous, frail figure. It's Ko, the pink Flicky. Somehow, due to either a malfunction or some kind of spiritual happening, Gamma is experiencing an inexplicable vision of the one contained within him. This is the first time he's seen Ko face to face, and not just in a photograph. She tweets at him repeatedly, letting out a few shrill calls before the static overtakes her and she vanishes. Although to us it's just the incomprehensible sounds of an animal, we already know that Gamma's connected to this Flicky on a level beyond just wiring. He understands what Coco is trying to tell him. Not far off, Omega abruptly halts his bombardment and the roaring salvo comes to a stop. From the scorched woodland in front of him, Gamma marches out, still in one piece, capturing Omega's curiosity. Has the suboptimal E-Series finally accepted his fate? I suppose in some manner of speaking. Yes, the dormant Ko managed to communicate with her host, reaching out to tell him not to fight for their survival, but for the survival of others. That's all that matters now. Her love for her siblings and for Aya runs so deep, and that love is compelling Gamma to make a choice. The choice to be selfless. With what's already become of Tomo and the island around them, this can't go on any longer. No matter what happens, Gamma must employ any and all measures available to him, even if it means sacrificing all that he is. To this end, Gamma recalls what Tails told him back in Part 2, the warning he gave him when fitting his new blaster. He warns Gamma not to strain his new blaster. Beta Mark II was able to perform a charged shot that required both blaster barrels to perform, but only one was in working order, as the other hand had been too badly damaged. Beta Mark II's body was made for stockpiling energy, Gamma's was not. It's ironic, isn't it? That Gamma must now summon the power of his brother Beta, another E-Series who once tried to destroy him and Ko. Gamma slowly raises his barbed arm cannon, and then, from the green node of his gun barrel, a swirling yellow ball of light materializes. As Omega stands tantalized by the performance, Gamma overrides his firing mechanism but continues injecting power in a process comparable to squeezing a hose pipe and causing a buildup of water at one end. The energy ball, now more akin to a glaring incandescent light bulb, swells to 3 times its initial size as Gamma continues feeding its intensity, pouring in far more energy than his body can reasonably dish out. His right optical cracks under the pressure. Indiscriminate snaps are followed by sparks and smoke from within his overclocked body. Omega, allowing this action to unfold, taunts and devalues Gamma's last coup de grace.
That expanding energy exhibits forces beyond your physical capability. You would destroy yourself as a means to defeat me? Feeble challenge accepted. I invite you to take your best shot.
Omega's industrial strength ego gives little consideration to the risks. Rather, he welcomes the challenge. Annihilating Gamma is one thing, but conquering his strongest attack proves a far more appetizing victory. Thus, Omega raises his arm and gestures with his hand as if to say, "Bring it." Gamma has funneled in all the energy that he can, his arm bursting and rattling on its hinges as it tries to retain the force. In tandem with an ear-piercing thunderclap, he fires the all-or-nothing supercharged laser, the blast so ultra-kinetic that it sends him flying backwards in the opposite direction. Omega buries his feet into the ground as the yellow wave surges towards him. His arms still outstretched, he opens his metal claw, catching hold of the boiling light on impact and wrestling against it. As the blast drives itself against him, pushing him back through the dirt, it's here that E-123 realizes that it's way more than he bargained for. Against all odds, the energy cascades into Omega's arm, pouring throughout his internals and erupting from every vent and cavity on his body. One by one, his defensive systems begin to malfunction as he aimlessly tries to repel the onrush, his chassis literally coming apart at the seams, and still, even now, he asserts his superiority in a fierce and crazed manner.
Disappointing, inadequate, futile. I can take this. This is nothing to me. I am E-123 Omega, the world's most powerful.
His words and his existence are bluntly brought to an end as in a cataclysmic dome-shaped fireball, Omega explodes. The detonation dislodges his head and blows it to smithereens along with the rest of him in an island-quaking shockwave, leaving only smoldering fragments as the dust clears. Undone by his own hubris, Omega has been obliterated. We won't be seeing him again in this What If. He has been permanently put down. Rest in pieces. Following Omega's destruction, a short distance away, Gamma lies recumbent and broken down. He tries to return to his feet, but he's no longer able to lift his own mass. He shuffles lethargically, his movements accompanied by sounds similar to a faulty power drill as the motors governing his appendages give out. In the midst of his toil, out of the blue, Gamma overhears some familiar high-pitched cheeps as two feathered friends perch upon him. The Flickies, Me and Fu. Sensing that Gamma was in distress due to their hereditary connection to Ko inside of him, they've soared to help. Of course, synchronically going where they go, from the grove a quarter of a mile away, Aya swiftly appears, having left her grandfather in the care of the camp's medical staff, and hightailed it back into the woods to look for Gamma. Upon spotting him thanks to the frantic chirping of the Flickies, Aya's heart spirals into despair. As the panic-stricken Aya runs over to Gamma, it's here that we see the full extent of what his charged attack did to him. Gamma's body is mangled and dilapidated to a grisly degree, both internally and externally. His blaster lays detached in shreds, partially melted by the extreme heat of his energy ray, and yanking off his hand as the gauntlet was blown loose. His whole right arm has been violently dislocated, and the entire right side of his torso dented and warped outward. While Gamma showed some signs of operation before, now he can barely move at all. Aya, down on her knees next to Gamma, tries to speak to him. But among the many injuries he has sustained, his voice chip has been damaged too. He can't even respond. All he can do is gaze at her and the Flickies through his one functioning eye lens, eased into contentment at the knowledge that they're all safe and okay. In a state of heartbreaking denial, Aya's mind disregards reality, convincing herself that she can somehow patch Gamma up, like a big jigsaw puzzle.
You're okay. You're okay. We'll put you back together, alright? We'll put this piece there, and that goes here, and...
Common sense soon returns to her. She doesn't need to be a robotics engineer to know that Gamma's not walking away from this one. Even if someone like Tails was here, he couldn't fix this. Remember, Eggman tech is complex and hard to replicate. Not even Gamma's auto recovery mode can save him this time. He is damaged beyond repair, deteriorating by the second, and when Gamma expires, Ko will expire along with him. A quiet anguish overtakes Aya, and her built-up sorrow sheds forth.
Gamma, go. You can't go. Don't.
As she sobs, she suddenly feels the caress of cold metal against her cheek. With the last of his strength, Gamma's left hand is raised to Aya's face, gently wiping away her tears. With his speech impaired, this is all he can do to comfort her, comfort being the only mission he has left. After a few grievous moments, finally, the light in Gamma's eye begins to flicker. His core processors set about flatlining, and the millions of tiny transistors that make up his extraordinary brain begin fizzling out. Still whimpering, Aya grips Gamma's hand as it goes limp, placing his and her hands onto his chest inches above where Ko slumbers. The Flickies join, nuzzling their heads upon Gamma's fingers, both they and Aya cherishing their final moments together as a family. And that's where we're going to end this story for right now. So, What did you guys think? What did you think of the surprise appearance of Omega? What did you think about the clash between him and Gamma, and the circumstances that ultimately led to their double KO? Is this story called What If Gamma Survived, or is it really called What If Gamma Survived for a bit longer? Perhaps it was always Gamma's destiny to give his life for the sake of others. Please share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I've been the Sega Scourge, and I'll see you guys in the next Sonic What If. Take care.